Corpses, lumbering, rotting cadavers. They are amongst us.
If there's a
whip,
there's a way. If there's a whip, there's a way. Welcome to NOCLIP. I'm Chad Ruthermond.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today we're going to be talking about Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem, which was released in 2002 on the GameCube, was published by Nintendo, and developed by Silicon Knights. You may recall Silicon Knights as the developer of Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, and that's the only other thing I remember them doing.
They made 2 Human and then sued someone about 2 Human and then lost and then never made anything ever again.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah. But they made this game, which is... I was trying to give you guys a pause so that I didn't have to give away my opinion of the game. And instead you guys could interject with your strong, forceful opinions.
Yeah, well, I fully understand now. I do have a thesis on this game.
Yes?
Which is, this game has an obscene amount of potential that is not actualized nearly ever. I feel like it has a lot that's going for it really strongly, and then it doesn't maximize on any of it. It is the jack of all trades, except I think it's more of like a 9 of all trades. It's a couple steps below the jack.
Oh, and sorry. When you said 9, I assumed 9 out of 10. I was like, oh, it's super good, but no, a 9 in
playing cards.
In playing cards sounds weird. Isn't it?
Yeah,
poker?
pretty sure.
Whatever. Understand your relative measure of this game's quality now. But what items within the game do you think were not actually actualized upon, and how could they have been?
Man, is this... I mean, I can do the whole podcast. That's fine. So I just want to start with like the overall Resident Evil-iness of this game as like my base like jumping off point for this, because I can give you a like the theme of this podcast is going to be, I thought this was really great, and I think that the Resident Evil-iness of this was really great, but they've messed up a couple of things. I think specifically the design of, like, the mansion, despite being taken basically straight out of Resident Evil already, there's one fewer door on the right side than the mansion in Resident Evil, and they go to different locations, obviously.
My fucking God, how can we ever accept this outrage?
But you're, like, the entryway, it looks almost the same, like aesthetically, except it's not pre-rendered because they have full 3D environment, so everything looks a little bit murkier than the contemporary GameCube version of Resident Evil that already existed. And that persists, but that's not anything I'm going to rail against. But then all the puzzles are like 1 or 2 steps down from being like actually intriguing, and your like way of going about things is just like there's a level of interaction removed from like everything. I don't know. That's kind of like your initial experience with this.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, if you're looking at this game kind of like through like a modern lens, a lot of it feels like kind of shallow or not realized fully, like you were saying. But there's something about this game where it just kind of feels so like quintessential to that console generation. And I don't know if like there was a certain amount of nostalgia, that like a nostalgic feeling that it gave me, but I found this game to be like surprising. Like, I had got a surprising amount of enjoyment out of this game. It almost kind of feels like if I had been working in the video game industry at the time, that I would have made something like this, where it's like, let's do like a survival horror, and I'd be like, but like make it like an action adventure game.
I feel
like it really appeals to me in that way.
The traditional survival horror experience is dead, like in 2018.
Yeah.
However, this is definitely not the game that killed it. Like, you could never point to this game and be like, they took it too far. If anything, they didn't take it far enough, because the game that actually killed it was Resident Evil 4, and that came out about a year later and was and they took it very far in the other direction.
Wait, oh my god, really? Is it? Did you just make that up, or is it genuinely 1 year after this game, RE4 came out on the GameCube?
This game came out in 2004, and RE4 maybe it came out in 2006. You'd think I would know this.
I don't know.
Of all the people in this room to know this.
You are the most likely, but that doesn't mean you are most likely to know facts about time.
That's true. I kind of pride myself in that.
About facts about time?
No, I was right. It's 2005. So it was 1 year later.
Damn, that really puts into perspective how much the graphical improvements had been going through in the GameCube era, and really how good RE4 was at its time. But we're not talking about Resident Evil fucking anything on this podcast. We are talking about Eternal Darkness, and part of the reason...
I would like to point out before we talk about Eternal Darkness, the Resident Evil 4 was on 2 discs. So, like, while the graphical improvement was there, it also had the inconvenience of being a weird 2-disc GameCube game. Similar to other Silicon Knights developed game, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. Anyway, move on.
No, instead of moving on, did you know that I own a 3-disc GameCube game?
I didn't. What game is that?
It's a Lord of the Rings licensed turn-based RPG whose name I forget entirely because it was completely unmentionable and lost to time.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I got stuck on the elephants that show up during Return of the King.
That does seem like it would be hard to like tactics out. You
Indeed,
know?
Yeah. You had the party and everything, but like scale was held relative, so the elephant was like 15 stories tall. It was just a huge elephant, and I don't remember. I remember not being able to do much. And I still have the discs to this day.
That's good.
In case we ever want to go back to that.
We could do a podcast on it.
Potentially.
But anyway.
So this darkness...
is eternal.
No. Bad. This darkness was a port of an N64 variety of darkness, kind of. It was initially developed for the N64, which I think lends a lot of credence to our descriptions of, this seems kind of limited and not fully developed in a lot of ways, because the game had an enormous development time because they had to functionally nearly restart from scratch from moving to a cartridge to disc-based system. Well, a tiny disc, but disc-based nonetheless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was even... I found this when doing weird image searches related to this game when I wanted to learn its deep secrets. Is that it was actually on the box of the N64. Like, if you like certain later copies, if you turned around, it had like screenshots of the mansion, but like N64-y.
Right.
Yeah, it was very nice. But yeah, so... I think this game feels old because it really wasn't even made for the GameCube console generation.
Yeah, it wasn't new when it came out.
No. It was supposed to be Resident Evil's, like, contemporary.
Yeah.
Of some sort, not anywhere close to.
It ended up being the contemporary of the wrong one.
Correct.
While we are talking about, especially, like, it's like when the game was new, people would put the game into their GameCube consoles and boot it up.
I mean, we did it when the game was old, but...
Annie mentioned, like, having kind of a nostalgic feeling playing this game because of its, like its pedigree, I guess, as being, like, a Silicon Knights developed GameCube title that was, like, of the genre that you don't see much anymore. And that's all very valid, but, like, I have a very legitimate nostalgic experience with this game because I actually have played through it twice prior to this most recent time.
Ooh.
Back when I was a kid, which is why I have a copy of it and why we didn't have to pay $180 fucking to play this old GameCube game that I find to be mostly just mediocre in retrospect. But I do, have to welcome Cthulhu back to the podcast after a brief hiatus, as it always is. It's almost as if the people who make video games are like a bunch of nerds who like H.P. Lovecraft.
Almost.
Yeah.
They're also racists. They're deep racists. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's just H.P. Lovecraft, I think. But the way that this game handles its themes are one of the few things that I can say that I legitimately like a lot. Like, I think that while the story is a little bit, like, obnoxious, like, some of the characters are a little overacted, and there's, like, this importance it puts on stuff that maybe shouldn't be there. I think that overall, the way that they handle, like, Lovecraft is better than a lot of games up to this point have. Not as well as other games have done in the future, but it was probably a high point when it came out.
A lot of Lovecraft adaptations don't really try to port over the kind of worldwide scale of a lot of those old stories, which is something interesting. You'd have it's still represented in like Lovecraft themed tabletop games even to this day, but in digital space and other media, people generally just go for the cool monsters and the horror.
Right.
But you'd have characters going, in all these different continents all over the world, and this game does that both geographically and through time. In what must have been a pretty, I'm not going to say amazing, like the amount of diversity in terms of gameplay, space, and scenery at the time, but at least a notable amount. Like, how many playable characters are in this game total? It's like over 10, right?
I think it's like 13.
Both those numbers sound too high to me. I was thinking like 8.
Do you ever repeat characters?
No. Except for in the final boss. You play them all. I want to say it's like 8 characters.
Do you play them all in the final boss?
Yeah.
Huh.
Each one of their spirits gets summoned to help in the fight.
There are 10 chapters, like numbered chapters in the game. So actually, okay, this can make sense. So 10.
One of them is her grandpa or her dad or whatever who does not help, or you don't play as him.
Right. So we'll say like probably 9 then.
Oh.
Let's go 9. I'm not 100% on that, but we might come to it as we go through it. And I genuinely do like the way that they have all these playable characters, because there are actual statistical differences between them. And it isn't like an RPG where it's like, oh, make your build. It's just you're forced into whatever this particular person's strengths and weaknesses are. Or in the case of like max all weaknesses, because fuck that guy. And like including like this hidden stamina meter, which like determines how fast you can run and how many attacks you can do, which is like kind of difficult to grok when you're first playing the game, but sort of like it's not really intuitive, but it just ends up not mattering that much. I think all of that is good, but I disagree that there's a variety in any way as far as the gameplay goes. I feel like the different weapons help, but like every single person finds this like stone-walled temple with traps and zombies in it. It's like exactly the same level 10 times in a row, minus like 2 or 3 of them.
If I said gameplay, that's because I'm hallucinating from lack of sleep.
Okay.
And what I meant was aesthetics difference. You're always in a different time and place, and they even, to limited success, try to represent that visually.
Yeah.
And that's enough where I feel like if I was an 11-year-old who had never been scared before in my young innocence, it would have, and I got this game, it would have really helped.
Yeah, that the game does feel really like overambitious, I think, for when it was made, and that's mostly to its detriment, like, looking at it now. But like it's done with like such a sincerity though. Like it really feels like they tried to make like a really awesome game with like a huge scope and like lots of characters. And I can't help but kind of love it for that. Like it really like shines through for me.
For sure. And like I actually like a lot of the characters as well. There are only a few that are like really stupid, which is actually an accomplishment.
Like the colonial era guy. I can't remember his name.
Are we talking? Is this the guy that you play as in the mansion?
Yeah,
with
is
the
that
Maximilian?
Maximilian?
That's Maximilian. Yeah,
he's the worst.
He just is trash. Also, I put this note down, and this is the only time that I could possibly mention it. In his chapter, you get these flintlock pistols. The sound that it makes when you reload them is the silliest fucking thing in the whole world. Which I'll just put a clip in right now. Isn't that funny? Yeah.
No, we haven't heard. God damn it, you lie constantly.
I'm acting. I'm trying to sell the illusion, JJ.
That we just listened to the clip.
Speaking of illusions, what do you know about what a flintlock pistol sounds like when it's reloaded?
Well, the way that it sounds in this game is like if you took like a soapy rag and just like rubbed it against a already clean window.
That was one of the last sound effects that they were doing. And whatever they were going to use got like corrupted, and they were like, "Oh, we had to pick something out of the sound library."
So let's go with soapy rag. That's the one.
We've got to ship this.
It goes out tomorrow.
They really did go back to the sound library like way too many times in the development of this. There are lots of like audio cues that I kind of like in my hind brain know that I've heard before, but cannot point to any specific source.
Yeah, you get that a lot with like N64 era games. Like there's this burp sound effect in Donkey Kong 64 that I know I've heard like 20 other places.
Right.
And it's always weird.
This game uses like a gate shutting sound effect that I have like strong audio memory tied to GoldenEye 64. Like they use the exact same sound. You're like a door I forget. I don't know what it's supposed to be. They use it for a gate in this game.
I think we've stumbled upon an Eldritch secret of sound, and that we need to go out into the world and pursue the location of the Nintendo sound library. Mm-hmm. You guys don't seem nearly as excited about this.
Yeah, that sounds really boring.
I will keep those Eldritch tunes to myself then. Bitches.
I do want to go back briefly to talk about the like plot and Lovecraftian themes. Sort of the thing this game actually does the most correctly. Mm-hmm. And then we can move on from there if you would like. One of the things that I do legitimately like about the way that this story goes is the way that they introduce you early on to the concept of like I don't know what they call them in this game, like the ancients, the old ones, the old gods, those ones,
them dudes,
and then they proceed to go, because the game is just like a linear progression through time as you start and go toward the end. You see like humanity, basically the world of Eternal Darkness is the game assumes that the great old ones do exist and that they have an effect on the real world, to the point where humanity is sort of like aware of sort of an extra terrestrial influence on it. So they have this like progress of trying to understand this through like what is essentially just straight up knowing about something weird, into like religion and like the way that they handle it, into people attempting to study it with as like a scientific endeavor, and then to the end of the game where it's sort of like just mysticality, like sort of a modern magic sort of thing. And I thought that they nailed like that all the way through, in the way that like people's understanding of it gets like further and further from the truth until it eventually loops back around.
Yeah. And I think it's like key that they never actually go into explaining any of it. Mm-hmm. Like it's left up to your imagination the whole time, and like getting to see the few glimpses of like that blubbering eye pit that's in that temple, and like a few other Eldritch horrors along the way, and like getting to see all of the, or hear all of like the, when you do the spells, like all of the like ancient chanting that happens.
Yeah.
Like there's just enough to like really create like a good Eldritch horror atmosphere.
Yeah, the belching eye pit is Mantarok.
Mantarok.
Yeah, the corpse god.
That sounds
There
like
you
the
go.
name that it would have.
Yeah, no, dude,
Mantarok the corpse god.
Mantarok the corpse god is great. It's like I love everything about it as
Yeah.
a thing.
Yep.
It's just real good.
Or, as he's better known, the blubbering eye pit.
The blubbering eye pit. Mantarok the colon again the corpse god.
Colon again. The colons never end. The colon's always repeating. Mantarok the corpse god.
He's got so many mouths. How many colons do you think the dude has? Probably like
We never get
thousands.
to see the bottom part of his body.
Exactly. He's like a bread pudding, sort of like, but the bread parts, like the pastry parts of it, are eyeballs and mouths.
Yes, that's an accurate description.
It's an Eldritch bread pudding.
It is unknowable.
Am I misremembering, or
It
are
is
there
delicious.
are there also like some tentacles coming around the sides?
Okay, so at one point, people like proceed into his chamber, and like happens like a weird arm with another mouth on it comes over and just envelops somebody and then takes them back into the mass. I'm assuming the way that I read it is that when not impaled by huge magical towers in a pentagram temple that appears to occupy all places at once,
Yes.
he can just like form different like
Okay.
things, like a Plastic Man situation. But like way scarier than a Plastic Man.
His true form is unknowable, JJ.
Okay, fine. All right, sure. I was just trying to see how well the like unknowable flesh creature really mapped to our understanding of bread pudding, which is comparatively much more solid.
It has fewer tentacles, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I really fucking love bread pudding, and I don't want to give off the
You have
impression
to think
that
about Mantarok the corpse god every time that you... Yeah.
it's because there's actual food that really is just flesh piles, so it's not even that far gone that you'd assume that
That's true.
bread pudding
yeah.
is just like a pile of eyes and mouths.
Hold on, wait. We're not still in the Harvester episode right now. We need to move. We need to go in a less weird direction. There are a shitload of mechanics in this game.
Yes.
Just like mechanics piled on top of other mechanics.
That also somehow makes the game feel older, to me
Yep.
anyway.
No, I would agree.
Yeah. The kind of like just start of the PS2 era game, like early 3D games where there was just not a lot of focus in like the action adventure space at all, and you just had a million things just all on top of each other. What was that game that made the whole theme that had the movie based around it, and it was Pixar-y?
Ratchet and Clank?
Yeah, with the guns that turn people into
Yeah.
chickens and
Yeah.
nonsense. It's like that game. There's just lots of stuff all over the
I mean,
place.
Ratchet and Clank was a platformer with a focus on combat with a bunch of different weapons.
Yeah. The reason that Ratchet and Clank works in a way that this game does not work is that Ratchet and Clank sort of limits its control system to being like, you have a ton of weapons, but they only work on enemies. And so they put enemies in the game and you interact with the enemies with your weapons, but you're not going to like... Now, later games in the series, I haven't played like the most recent one or 4. I'm not going to go into all of this, but later games in the series may have implemented more stuff like this, but like you wouldn't like get a freeze ray and then shoot the ground and be able to like slide along it. And I feel like this game puts inside of you the expectation that you can do crazy things with the systems in the game, but you just cannot. And also it doesn't offer enough of a playground with the mechanics that it already has.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit, I think, in the Bayonetta episode, where we were like, why does this game have like a Star Fox level where you're riding on a... I don't even remember what it was.
It was like a missile, yeah.
Like, it was just like a thing back then that people thought they needed to have a bunch of gameplay variety to keep people interested. But, yeah, I think it comes down in this game to like the movement mechanics. Like, they're really rigid and stiff, almost as if this was originally an N64 game or something. So like combat feels clunky. Then they have melee combat, and they give you guns to use too, and there's spells. And it's really difficult to like walk around like and position yourself, and then like go into the menu and equip the right spell because you don't have it, and then like use the spell, but then it has to like do a little charge thing before it goes off, and then you gotta like switch to the gun and then target the guy's head, but then you can't get it because it's going to his arms, and then you finally get it to the head, and then you shoot him in the head, and that's what combat's like. There's just a few too many things going on.
Yeah, a lot of steps. It's really hard to accent horror as your primary theme if all threatening activity that is really approaching you does so at a speed so slow that it allows you to go through like the 6 or 7 different forms that you have to like dot and sign and fill out before you can go through.
It's like bureaucracy in combat.
It is. And it's thus, to me anyway, kind of boring. I remember being pretty pumped on this game early when I was first starting out in the theming and the initial start in the mansion. And then when I hit Marcus Aurelius, or whatever his name is.
Pius Augustus?
Whatever. Roman.
Right, yeah.
When I'm just like, oh, wait, no, I don't have to run from the zombies. I just kill all of them immediately with a mechanic I have mastered in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a it's a really simplistic thing. Like, it feels like it should be more engaging than it is, because it's like, oh, target the body parts you can do. But like, you can, with nearly every character in the game, easily cut off the basic enemy's head and both of their arms before they're able to do an attack.
Right.
Yep.
Which is a little silly.
I think it's with the second character. It's like the girl, like the African girl.
I was calling her Angie, but that it cannot be it. But I think I got it because the name of like the location she's in is Angkor, and I don't know why, but I don't remember what her name is.
Well,
though.
And then Angie, as we'll call her. There's a part with her like where you get the weapon and then you get to a point where it can break if you don't save a particular guy in time, and I managed to save him in time, but then afterwards I died, and it was like my first death, and then I had to like start over the whole game because I hadn't saved until that point, because I'm used to modern games.
In fairness, I did warn him about this.
Yeah, I forgot. Good. But the second time through, I did not save him in time, and the weapon broke, and I thought that was like a really good source of tension. But right after that chapter, they just give you a spell that repairs things that are broken, and so you never have to worry about it again.
Yeah, and makes your weapons stronger as well.
Yeah,
so it's like doubly who gives a shit.
So it seemed like maybe they were onto an interesting idea there, and then immediately changed their minds.
Squandered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that, as we've already kind of been discussing for a while here through a couple different angles. Like, I really liked the system in concept. The idea of spells as language plays in really well to the whole like Eldritch knowledge thing, and can facilitate a kind of nice experimentation, which the game actually does allow. Like, you can make spells that the game doesn't tell you how to make.
Yeah. The spell system's actually my favorite thing in the game.
It is absolutely genius. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say that.
I mean, like, no, I mean the idea of it.
Yeah.
The actual execution, maybe not so genius. It's so close, though.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine if they had allowed you to, like, make bad spells? Like, if you just threw shit together at random, like, occasionally you'd get a spell that just did something very bad, or, like, a little bit bad, like, worked kind of as intended, because all of the runes have a meaning. So you could hash out sort of like what you were trying to do.
It's exactly like in D&D when Daniel can make a magic item and he has to roll for its quality or whatever, however that works. Yeah. And it can be like a not so great version depending on how he rolls.
Yeah.
Very not so great.
But I feel like
very not so great.
Yeah. I feel like this kind of a system could be cool in like an RPG or something. Like, it's interesting to see people do like magic in a different way. Like, I don't know, I could just see this like being, it's like an untapped, like really good idea that I like to see people try to iterate on.
I agree. Though, in another one thing they did differently about magic is that they make it recharge by having you walk in a circle.
Oh yeah.
Which is annoying.
Wait, that's what that's tied to? Walking?
It says, like, the tutorial message related to it says this meter recharges when the character is in motion. So they just mean move around.
Oh, God.
Yeah, because I also didn't remember reading that and was like, what makes my magic recharge? Is this like Pokemon rules? Is it based on steps? Turns out, yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, like, I was frequently just, like, would, like, get into a combat encounter, was woefully unprepared for it, left the room, walked in a circle a bunch, then, like, used the shield spell, healed up, continue walking in circles, enchant my weapon, like, enchant the shotgun, and then go in and, like, blow the enemy's head off in one hit, kind of a thing.
Never have I, like, legitimately been like, the only way that they could have done this is by just putting pickups in the game. Like, make enemies drop a little magic vial, and don't have it recharge from walking around. Because it disincentivizes having fun, and incentivizes walking in a circle.
Either that, or it would have had to have been, like, more tightly paced so that you're doing more like exploration or whatever in between combat, so it just refills naturally. But then why not just make it auto regen?
Right, yeah, like it just at a certain point just like start refilling it at, however many ticks per second.
I feel like Zelda magic pots would probably be the best scenario for this game.
I fucking hate the Zelda magic bar. I hate it
well,
so much.
I don't usually like it either, but for a game at this time, that would probably be the best solution. Just like magic refills.
I assume you're talking about the like magic in Zelda as it appears in like Ocarina of Time through to
correct
Skyward Sword.
Yes,
because that there's
really just through Wind Waker, because it isn't in any of the games after that.
Oh, I didn't even think about it like that. Like I've played a ton of Skyward Sword. I've played it through like three, four times at least, right? Just don't remember. I'm too good at the game, is what it is.
Yeah. Shut up and get to your point.
Effectively, that's exactly the same system that we have here, except the way that you recharge it isn't by picking up little pots.
You don't. You see, you've identified and separated the part that I don't like so much.
It's the pots part?
It's the pots part.
Why?
It's the dumbest, most conventional way you could ever represent, like, magical power. Like, I cannot think of a single item that is, like, more normal to humanity than pots. Like, when you dig up the most ancient and forgotten places of human existence, what you find are pots.
Yeah.
Discarded, broken pot shards. Mm-hmm. And it's not even, like, a magic pot. Like, it's just like a pot with like a green thing.
It's supposed to be like a little potion bottle,
but it's not that. It's a pot.
But it's got kind of a bottle shape.
It depends on what game
it's got
in.
like a wide base, and then it goes up to like a tall, skinny. It's like an
Erlenmeyer flask.
Yeah, like a magic potion bottle.
It's a little stupid, but I'm okay with it. I would have preferred to have those in this game, though, than the current system of walking in circles. Or even just like a consumable resource that you pick up, like pieces of the heart of Mantarak, the corpse gun.
Oh yeah, this is a game that really needs like a living organ to consume.
Yeah,
as an item. Yeah,
that would be kind of dope, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
That might go over Nintendo's line here, which actually we haven't addressed yet.
This game is published by Nintendo.
Yes, this is the first M-rated Nintendo published game, I believe.
That could be true.
Because they've, before like Bayonetta 2, they had only made, I think, 2? Like this game and not Nier. There's another game that's like Geist. I think it's just this game and Geist that were the M-rated Nintendo games before.
I don't even know what Geist is.
Don't really look into it. It's not
All
worth
right.
your time.
None of the like Metroid games are M-rated or
Nope.
Nah, they were mostly E, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That would be
the Prime series.
That would be
is
like the only thing I could think of that might.
Yeah.
So, to be fair, Super Metroid probably should have been. If Super Metroid was made now, it would probably have an M rating. Because it was like.
E10 plus.
It would be E10 plus. That's mature for Nintendo audiences. We're all babies. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how much really there is to say. I just think that Nintendo wanted to diversify a bit coming into the GameCube generation, and probably saw this as an opportunity to like pull in the Resident Evil people a little bit.
Yes, but if remember, this was an N64 plan, meaning they had invested this money like at the same time Resident Evil was becoming a trend. So I guess
I mean, they had stuff like GoldenEye and like Perfect Dark, which were more aimed at like a mature audience at the time. Like probably just making an investment in something they thought like, you know how business works.
I do know how business works, Andy.
Like they were like, it seems like there's like a growing market for more mature games, so let's fund this.
Let's
one.
do some of these.
Yeah.
But you're describing like sexy teen violence, not like revolting flesh violence, which is like a completely different audience in my mind.
I also feel
Sexy
like,
teen.
like it's violence that
What
appeals
about-
to sexy teens.
Oh, okay.
Not like zombievers.
Okay.
It's a different thing. I think though also you're giving the timeline here slightly too little credit.
Mm-hmm.
The GameCube released in 2000. Resident Evil released in 1996. So there's actually a 4-year period where this could have been in development, where, like, assuming that they saw Resident Evil and went, let's make that again. Which I don't think is what happened here.
Yeah, and that and like Silent Hills was also popular, or Silent Hill,
Yeah.
singular, was popular.
Don't
on
make
the
me
PS,
cry
yeah,
on the
I know.
podcast, Andy.
On the PS1, so they were like, maybe we need some survival horror over here.
That's true, yeah. And then Silent Hill 2 didn't come out till the PS2, so it seemed like it was an open field of survival horror at the time.
Speaking of which, man, they got those camera angles right. That's one thing I want to give this game specific praise for. I don't know how they could have improved that, but compared to like to remake or whatever that was called.
Our remake?
Yes.
Something like that.
This game, instead of doing like the jerky transitions between rooms where the camera just shifts immediately, does these like cool little smooth movements in the 3D
like
space.
pans, because it's not constrained by the pre-rendered backgrounds.
Yeah.
Because if you panned over a pre-rendered background, it would look hilarious. As like the room stays in exactly the same position.
It's like leaving forced perspective.
Yeah. Well, you would just pan in a different way. You would pan just left and right.
Right.
You couldn't turn it.
Yeah.
So you'd have to.
It would just be a flat
yes.
It should be a man like pulling back on a piece of paper
and moving. Yeah. No, but yeah, you would have to design the pre-rendered backgrounds with that in mind and make them like wider than they needed to be to do something like that.
But like it removes a lot of the things we complained about with the early Resident Evil titles, because you can have smooth analog-based control of your character even as you're moving between these like really scary, dramatic, constrained camera angles, and that also removes any kind of necessity for tank controls or any kind of other system to compensate for that loss. So
Yeah.
good on them. That's something they did legitimately better than a lot of comparable horror titles of the time.
Now, if only they used that technology for good instead of making perfectly symmetrical square rooms with 2 hallways, like every level in this game is. That doesn't take place in the mansion. The mansion, which I legitimately think is fantastic, like from a level design perspective, I really enjoy it. Those levels all get a pass from me.
Yeah.
Like anytime that you're in the mansion, I'm okay with it. But every time that you're in a shitty temple, fuck it.
I specifically really liked the church.
The church is good.
That was my favorite. Like, and one thing we haven't mentioned is you reuse each location like 3 times throughout history. You know, it's in a different time period with a different character each time. So like the levels get like added onto and changed in various different ways, which was obviously like a technical limitations why they did that, but I think they handled it really well. Yeah. Like, I think that actually added to the game.
Agreed.
Yeah. I do want to mention, well, I think we should take a break. Does everybody agree with that?
Whatever.
Sure.
But I do want to mention, while we're on the topic of the church, that Anthony has my favorite level in the game. If you recall, Anthony was he's the monk who is going to go warn Charlemagne about an attempt on his life. And I love this level because it's just Anthony's terrible, awful, no good, very bad day, where he like rolls into church regular day, immediately corpse on the floor, like some guy gives him a thing to give to the king, and it like shocks him and curses him. He's slowly turning into a zombie. He gets sent to the trapper dimension. He encounters like a horrible 3-headed beast. This is the first time the player sees any of this. And then like he's decaying over time. You're like, man, Anthony just can't catch a fucking break.
Yeah.
And then he gets there, King's already dead, and then they fucking kill him too.
How did we not talk about the Trapper dimension yet?
Oh, we'll get to it.
Okay.
After the break. Welcome back. Hopefully, learning all that you did on the first half, you did not slip into madness from all the Eldritch knowledge that we've bestowed upon you. Which is to say, let's talk about sanity. Not like the concept of sanity.
Aww.
I mean, we could if you feel it's relevant, but...
You mean Sanity's Requiem?
Sanity's
Is that what
Requiem.
you want to talk about?
Which... Just as like a quick aside, because I don't want to get too much into the weeds on this topic, because I feel like the topic is designed, like the sanity meter as a concept is designed to get you lost in the weeds so you don't think about how linear it actually is. But probably the best sanity mechanic in the whole game is when Alex goes slightly too insane after like the 3rd or 4th level. And it shows a thing that's like, thank you for playing Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Please, the story will be continued in Sanity's Redemption. That's really, really funny. And then she comes back, she's like, this can't be happening. It's like this little bit of commentary they slipped in like a really funny and effective way.
Agreed, the joke is fantastic. It comes at their own expense, though. This game is so poorly named, and it ages worse and worse in the name department every year.
I don't think Eternal Darkness is by itself that bad of a name.
Eternal Darkness is the most 2006 name I've ever heard in my life.
It does sound a little generic, but I would agree. I think it's fine.
I believe that the exact phrase Eternal Darkness is used in Dark Souls, so it can't be that bad, right?
Oh, good point.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, now it's great.
Moving on.
No, I think it's weird, though, that they use a lot of those as jokes when it's supposed to be like a survival horror game. Because, like, there were plenty of them that actually, like, or not plenty, like there were a couple standout ones that actually like kind of startled me a bit. Like the one where I went to save the game and it was like deleting your save file. And I was like, oh shit, did I accidentally do something? You're like, oh wait.
Yeah.
The game.
The meta ones are arguably some of the best because like you have your like standard. We should briefly stop this conversation.
Describe what the sanity meter actually is.
So as you see enemies, or rather when enemies see you, they get like little laser eye beams that come out of their face, and it reduces a plainly visible green meter on the screen. And this is really the worst part about it. When you look at a game, like, because sanity mechanics are weirdly a thing that like probably has a wiki page somewhere at this point, where like this is something that is quantifiable in games now. And most of the time, they aren't represented in such an, like, mechanical, as I described, linear way. And this is kind of, like, one of the first, if not the first, to actually include it as a mechanic, so I'll give it a pass, for sure. But it does make it less, like, intriguing, I guess. It's just like a bar that describes how much crazy shit you're gonna see.
Yeah, they basically make it like a health bar. It's as gamified as you could make it.
Yeah. But now that that's out of the way, some of the sanity effects are very mechanical in nature, where it's like you walk into a room and there's just like a dozen enemies and you're like, oh, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I actually do like that they try to incentivize the combat by making that refill your sanity meter.
Right.
Like by doing a finishing move.
Yeah. It's like the glory kills in
Doom.
Yeah. Though definitely the most glorious kill is the one with like the light swords where you just like throw it down
into their back
and then pull it back up is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the kind of finishing move that says you're icky and I don't want to touch you.
Which is pretty true most of the time, unless of course once again you're Max bucking the trend and being a weirdo and performing autopsies on everything that dies. Though, actually, I don't know if you guys did this. After performing an autopsy on an enemy, you can then go into the menu and, like, look at the autopsy report. Mm-hmm. And it has this, like, fantastic voiceover of Max describing it and, like, being incredibly melodramatic about it. Like, he's like, that which was dead is now very much alive!
I remember looking at that autopsy page, but don't remember there being a voiceover. So
I think you have to like activate it with a button prompt or something.
Yeah,
it's really good. I'm a big fan of it as a thing.
We kind of touched on it earlier. Did you guys? I don't know how far this extends, but I do know of one case specifically. David Hayter is in this game for like 1 second.
Is he?
Yes. He's it like very, very early. I am certain that he is the voice of both of the like generic Roman guards that you leave behind as pious. Like no doubt in my mind, David Hayter. Right. Used as this generic NPC that is forgotten. I don't know where other secret voice talents lie. I'm hoping that like the guy who's done these crazy things is also some famous man.
Is actually like a famous guy.
Speaking of specifically that scene at the beginning and voice acting,
I wanted to talk about this too.
They make the very weird decision of having it start out where they're actually speaking Latin or Greek or whatever they would have been speaking, and then it mid-sentence switches to English. And the first time, like I said, I had to play the beginning twice. First time I watched it, I was like, was that like a bug? Did like it start playing with different audio settings and then switched mid-sentence? Like, the fact that it happened mid-sentence seemed so weird. And I was like, and then on the second time, I'm like, were they really just trying to establish, hey, not all these characters are actually speaking English? Dumbass.
Did you genuinely think that they they localized this game entirely in Greek?
That made more sense to me
than what
they were actually doing.
I don't know if this is time itself coming to scratch at the backsides of my mind, but I feel like we've had this specific discussion before, maybe in the context of films, where another film did this exact same thing to try, including like the mid-sentence switch, and you were upset about it.
It makes no sense to do it mid-sentence.
It's really strange. I mean, like, I get what they're going for. They do it again when they're speaking Italian.
Yeah, like, it could have been, the execution is awful.
Well, it does establish that it's a switch for the viewer and that the characters aren't just bilingual. Yeah. Because if they broke it up sentence by sentence, they could be the ones switching.
I feel like that's a stretch to suggest that somebody would think that that's what was going on if they did it that way.
I don't know, man. Focus testers can be real. You can have real nitpicky complaints sometimes.
Yeah. The only other person in here that I'm even tertiarily aware of. So you're correct, David Hayter does play Roman Legionnaire 1. A spectacular waste of his talents. Is Rino Romano, who is Batman in the Batman animated series, like the WB one.
Oh.
From like way back in the day. I'm actually surprised to see him on this cast list. He plays Kareem in the third level. And that's about all. Which is fine, I guess. What were we
Sanity
talking
meter.
about? Sanity meter?
Yes.
That was so long ago.
Yes,
Do we
it
want to
was.
talk about the Trapper dimension?
Yeah, we should mention everyone's favorite dimension. The Trapper dimension.
Genuinely don't know what you mean.
Okay, so as we've mentioned, there's just a whole plethora of shallow game mechanics in here.
Yeah.
And the worst of them all is the Trapper dimension. There are these little scorpion-like enemies that can like emit like a pulse. Like what they do is they see you and then they like explode.
Well, technically they hear you. They
Well,
can't see you.
they hear you.
Yeah.
And then
you
if
can
you-
sneak by them.
Yeah,
but you don't.
And if you get hit by the pulse, you get taken to the Trapper dimension, which is just like
4 platforms.
like
and
it's
stuff.
like yeah, it's like like 4 or 5 little islands connected by these different colored teleporters with like some enemies, and you just kind of go through it to the end and you leave.
Yeah, thank you for visiting the Trapper dimension.
Yeah.
Please come again.
And it's like the most bizarre, pointless thing ever.
yeah, basically its existence is entirely useless. It's just there as like an inconvenience.
Yeah,
But-
and it does let you refill either your health, stamina, or magic, which is like a little
Yeah.
plus side, because it does kind of suck to get sent there early. So
Yeah.
they give you a little,
Little incentive
Yeah.
not to just take the purple portal every time.
yeah.
So by trapper, you meant like a place in which individuals are trapped.
Well, those little enemies are called trappers.
Oh.
So
Yeah, those are the trappers,
Okay.
and this is where they put you. I would like to propose that we change the name of the dimension to the Trapper Keeper.
Yes.
Right? That's exactly where I went. I was like, was there a
But-
secret spot in the game that was full of like crazy eldritch unicorns?
the trappers are not kept in there, though.
That's true, yeah. It's the Trapper's Keeper.
There,
Apostrophe, yes.
the trapper's keeper. Yes, the trapper's keep.
Trapper.
That just sounds like a Disneyland ride.
It does. But they do one cool thing with the Trapper dimension, which is you get the ability to summon trappers like halfway into the game or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's 2 points like in like 2 different puzzles where you have to send stuff there to move it out of the way. And one is like a corpse and the other is like some kind of like
It's like a bookcase or
object,
something.
yeah, that was like had like some kind of spell put on it to where it couldn't be physically moved.
Right.
And both of those things will just be in the Trapper dimension from then on. So if you go there, you see them, and it's just kind of like, huh.
It's a neat little.
I remember a nice little detail there.
Yeah.
But that's it. I don't think it was worth including the mechanic for, though.
Well, because this is even... It's hard to say where, like, certain things should have been cut or moved or expanded upon, because I feel like just the scope of this game is far too wide that, like... Because I like the Trappers in concept. I also like the idea of having like a spell that creates a thing that can then go under. It's like the beetle in Skyward Sword. Where it's
I
like,
like
oh,
being
send
able
that.
to summon them.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's a neat little thing, but like one has to exist with the other the way that it's currently set up, even though I think that it could be better if you just had like a fucking RC car or whatever. like all of that would still function, just with a different sort of wrapping on it, a trapping, if you will.
Yes.
Yeah, this game, I mean, we've already identified that it has enough mechanics in it that could be separated out into all sorts of tiny variations on the same genre with different mechanics. You could get like an entire Alan Wake sequel out of the Canadian firefighter guy and his murder spree.
What a strange... Yeah, everything about this game is weird. I kind of forgot about some of that.
That was maybe the one that felt the most out of place.
Well,
it's the firefighter.
Yeah.
Guns McRules or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because you have... Okay, this is actually another big thing with the mechanics that we need to address. And then I kind of want to change gears, but when you're making a survival horror game, I think this game had the right idea in making melee weapons your, like, go-to, like, this is what you should be using most of the time. But they make ammo too plentiful for the guns to disincentivize using them at all. Like in the, this is incredibly important to make sure that you have this for like when the real shit starts. But then the guns feel like ass to use. Like they're really bad. Where in a game like this, they should be, your ammo should be more scarce and the gun should feel amazing. Like they should be one-shotting everything. Even the elephant gun, as funny as it is that it's there, doesn't do enough damage, which is a weird thing to say about a blunderbuss. Like, it should just demolish something.
It really feels like the guns are tacked on to me. Like, they initially just wanted it to have a melee combat system, and then they were like, well, we gotta put guns in it.
Once again,
everyone knows
Maximum
everyone knows you shoot zombies in the head.
Yeah.
Come on.
Has 2 flintlock pistols running around like an idiot.
Instead of that, they should have just made it melee combat and maybe made that feel better to play.
What's even worse is that you have these, like... And some of the melee weapons have this, like, combo move where you'll swing a couple of times and then you, like, kick the person and then they fall down and then you can't do anything. You stand there and you go like, well, he'll stand up eventually and then I'll hit him again.
That's when you're supposed to feel a sense of pride and accomplishment in what you have managed to accomplish in the game systems, Chad.
I think that's actually for when there are like hordes of enemies.
Yeah, you can knock someone down
so you can deal with the others.
Except you're never in a situation where that's actually precarious.
Not really, no.
That's real. There are plenty of fake precarious situations.
There's one part where in order to progress, you just have to kill like 15 consecutive guys that are coming through like a damage field wall. Like that was a little precarious, but they did send them at you like 2 at a time, so it was pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
I would have gained so much respect for this game if like once, because I think you only would need to do it once. Something that seems at first blush like an obvious fake out in the game is just straight up real. Even if it's one of the completely ridiculous ones, like your items are gone or something like that.
Right.
Like I would have loved this game so much and felt a whole lot more tension in a lot of those strange Sanity meter moments if there was any chance the back of my brain stopped kind of twitching in their initial experience, that I thought that they were actually real. Like it was too easy, especially since we live in a post-CRT era, to identify so many of them as you got me. Like in the same way, these moments feel like someone who's like jumping up out at you, not like a jump scare way, but in like my 10-year-old brother on Halloween way, where he's just wearing a mask.
Way.
Yeah. Literally the word boo. In which afterwards you just go like, you really got me, in a way that doesn't actually feel like horror.
Yeah.
And I would want to I feel like I could feel more tension in those moments if there was any chance that they were genuine threats.
Yeah, it's like we kind of started to get at earlier. It's like they played them all for jokes when it would have been way it seems like it would have been a way better idea to actually try to use them for scares.
Yeah.
Which they just don't even at all.
Or even just like, because you can keep the ones that are in there that are like the iconic ones, like having your head give you a monologue when you pick it up, or the video screen, like where it like cuts out and all that shit can stay.
Yeah, and like some of them where like you transition to another room and you're like controlling an enemy, like that's cool the first time, you know?
Yeah, same with like ones where you appear on the ceiling and shit.
Yeah,
but the ones that what they should do is incorporate it more, so rather than entering into a room and being in like a crazy room, you're instead just in a regular room, but there are some sanity effects going on, so maybe there's like an extra enemy who's not real, and if you attack it, like your sword goes through it and you have to go fight the other ones.
Like stuff that they don't call attention to immediately.
Yeah, and don't flash out of existence after 5 seconds.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah, and the first time you go into a room and you can't damage the enemy, it's like that's actually like a tense situation for a couple seconds.
And then it goes,
but then they
this can't be happening.
Yeah, and then it becomes like a punchline.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like some steps in the right direction, but not anywhere near enough. They got about a quarter of the way to the finish line. They got to the first hurdle, and we're like, this is too hard. Let's just put in some elements of the Psycho Mantis boss fight and call it a day.
Speaking of a quarter of the way to the finish line, there was a spiritual successor to this game on Kickstarter that didn't get the funding goal, and it was never made at all. It had another equally generic, horrible name that I've already forgotten because it's generic and horrible.
Long-lasting low light.
Goddamn.
Insanity's apocalypse.
Long-lasting low light? You stole that from like a foreign Amazon product page description.
Yes.
Of a book light. Like...
Eternal dimness.
Yeah. Forever night.
There you go. Forever night, Insanity's apocalypse.
We've nailed it.
I actually, one thing I really liked in this game was the puzzle progression through the mansion with Alex, where you would play a chapter as a character, gain a new ability from reading about them. You know, that's the in-world excuse for it. And then have to, like, find where in the house you could use that to progress. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it functions like a reverse Zelda dungeon, where after you get the item, you just use it one time before you then go and get the next one.
Yeah, but man, that library, or not library, the room through the library with, like, all the cranks and like the big telescope.
Oh, the telescope room. Yeah.
Oh yeah, screw the crank.
Man, what a red herring! I kept coming back to that, and like my mind built it up as like this crazy like Myst-esque puzzle that I was gathering all these pieces like for to like finally be able to do it. And then once you get to the point in the game where you can do it, it's the simplest fucking puzzle ever. You just like get the missing crank and like turn it, and now you're able to like direct a laser.
Yeah,
like
it's just like a regular laser
like,
thing.
I don't know what, because it's like right inside that first door on the right,
and
like,
you have access to it
immediately. And I just kept coming back to it and being like, oh man, that telescope room.
You're like, right, every time somebody mentions like a star or a planet, you're like, get rid of this thing now.
We're gonna take this note about the mist crank.
Oh yeah,
but it really did have that kind of feeling to it.
I've been laughing continuously because of how spot on that was as an observation.
You want it to be like, you want to really use your brain and figure out what it is that it wants you to do, and it just doesn't allow for it at all.
Yeah, Myst has really like ruined a whole, not really genre, but like tool in the puzzle game designer's tool belt. In that expectation set up by anyone who's ever played that game now prevents you from ever putting a puzzle in front of a player that's not like, oh, you just don't have the piece yet, come back to it.
Right.
Without it being immediately built up as this like elaborate thing that's way more important.
Well,
because
it doesn't feel like you're missing a piece when you first go there. 'Cause it's just like you want to turn the crank.
Because you can interact with things.
It feels like you just don't understand it yet.
Yeah.
It's also aesthetically really mist-like because you're in that room with like the fading sunlight coming through the like it all looks very regal and ordained.
The color palette's different than any other room in the house.
Yep.
And like even like the fact that you get the little crank to like go into the slot feels like it just feels like a mist thing.
Yeah.
It just straight up does.
I think it's like anytime normally we have a puzzle that's missing a piece in conventional design, what'll happen is either you can't interact with it at all, often to the extent where there'll literally be a text pop up that's like, I don't have the piece to this literal puzzle.
Right.
Or there'll be a button and you press it and nothing happens, and then that's your signal, and you have one interaction that's taken care of and it's done. A crank is the worst way to represent that situation because it exists on an arc. Like there's literally like an infinite number of positions you could have the crank in. And there's like 2 cranks initially. So yeah, they just have, do not set up a situation where you're missing a puzzle piece where you can your puzzle can have an infinite number of inputs put into it before you get what you need to actually solve it.
Right. And that's also the other thing is that like on paper, that's genius in including the crank thing because no one is going to even try to like randomly get it right before they know that they are missing something. Like that signals to the player you need specific information to perform this puzzle, which then sets your mind ablaze going what cool information. And like remember that 3-second cutscene of like the camera flying past Saturn earlier? What does it mean? The position of Saturn, it said that it was August 13th 2002.
What were the positions of the planets?
You're like browsing the internet trying to get coordinates for all the planets.
But yeah, and it just, something about it just feels different than all the other puzzles that you encounter, that it really sticks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that. One thing that I do that I just mentioned and I just want to like throw in is those like couple of cutscenes that just show space. It seems like really inexplicable. The purpose of it, I guess, is because they're waiting for like a planetary alignment. This is alluded to on the box art as well. In order for like the summoning of whatever to occur, like their ritual to be complete. But like out of context, just occasionally showing planets flying by is the most confusing thing to have happen. Because you're like, I remember I got pushed in that well with all the corpses. I was there for a minute. That was Mercury. Like, that's a planet. The correlation makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Planets aren't foreboding outside of the context of terrifying planet-based prophecies.
Right.
Like when you just see videos of moving planets, my brain anyway goes to like Bill Nye first and foremost above all other possible planet video sources, which is like a very high levity in all these like kiddie science planet videos. It's a happy moment that your brain goes to.
You want to talk about the final boss at all?
We should probably talk about the final boss at least like for a bit.
For a hot minute.
Yeah. So my full disclosure is I've watched the final boss take place twice in the last 2 weeks, but I only got about halfway through the game this time. So it's been 10 years since I bought the final boss. But it seemed like it was kind of hard.
Well, the final boss itself is kind of like a standard action adventure boss.
Oh, like against Augustus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is cool that you get to summon all the different ghosts of all the previous characters in it. That's pretty cool.
Pretty neat.
Be cool. But the lead up to it is awful and terrible. You have to go through like the whole ancient Cthulhu city as Alex, and it's just like this gauntlet of like combat and tedious puzzles and this floor that shocks you, and it takes forever, and like you're going through, and there's like the way you cast the spells is you have those runes or whatever, and one's like a pentagon, and then etc.
Yeah, there's a 3, 5, and a 7. I think
it's 5, 7, and 9.
5, 7, 9.
Yeah.
There's a 3 as well.
Okay, so it's 3, 5, 7, and then the thing in the city is a big 9-point thing that you have to use to like make a spell to summon the whatever dark god you need to summon to fight the other dark god.
Right.
And oh man, does it take forever. And you have to do it twice.
Yeah. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's like kind of similar to like when we talked about with Harvester, where I don't know if they felt like they needed to like really like switch up the gameplay or go like real action focused, or like they needed to do something to make the ending stand out, and they really just kind of fly in the face of the rest of the game with it.
And it's kind of, and we've talked about this a bunch of times. This is just like a thing video games seem to think is the way that you end your game, is by giving you something that is totally separate from what you've been doing the whole time. Like Earthbound did this, where like the last level leading up to its Eldritch horror final boss was just like a gauntlet of horribly powerful enemies with explosions.
At least that's like a JRPG trope, so you understand where it comes from.
But this game doesn't have saved states, so you can't just be like, oh, if I didn't flawlessly execute that fight, start over.
And at that point, like, you have a bajillion spells. You've got like the shield that lets you take 7 hits. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not hard at that point to get through it all. It just wastes your time.
Yeah, it's just long.
Yeah.
I like the fight with the big stompy 3-legged guy.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one was cool.
It was all right.
Like, visually, it's really cool.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Fight me.
I mean, Eldritch Horror Monster is pretty cool.
Yeah, you've got a good audience here for such designs. I'm pro, like, things which walk, which should not walk, and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, I think that this can be final thoughts, but let me prompt you for your final thoughts this time. Actually, before I do that, JJ, did you like this game, or did you think this game was like garbage fire?
That sounds like the exact description of final thoughts, but really curt.
Okay, fair. JJ, let's hear your final thoughts, and then I might prompt you further.
I was conflicted on this game. This game feels to me like one of the few straight-up C's we've ever played on the podcast before, but not a C because of consistent mediocrity, but a C because of good elements contrasted with poorly aged and at times just initially poorly designed elements that show its age. But yeah, this game has, to a lot of people, occupied a space of something that's kind of talked about in myth and legend because of the novelty of a lot of its like scary systems. And that's exactly where it should stay. Like, don't spend $200 to play this game. I can't imagine how sad I would be if I spent that much money like hyping this up as if it was another like Silent Hill 2, when in reality it's kind of just an interesting novelty that deserves to stay on like fact and trivia lists and in the minds of people who had good memories about it from when they were 10.
I will enjoy still having my copy like on the on my shelf, you know, for people to be like, hey, that game's expensive. I'm like, you're goddamn right it is. Okay, so given that, we can do this in however. I liked this game, and I assume Andy has a similar impression. but cannot for the life of me pinpoint something specifically that I think this game did that was like just very good. Like, I like this game as like an amalgamation of its parts, and I was wondering if you could fill that void. Can you point out something that you thought this game did like actually well?
I think for its time, this game was exceptional as a representation of Eldritch horror. And as time has gone on further, and that kind of style has become increasingly in vogue, it's become overshadowed by other things that did the same aesthetic way, way better, with a lot more of a consistent tone. But as I said earlier in the cast, like, this is a good representation of just conventional Lovecraft. I'm not going to take that away from it narratively. It's just not the best video game.
Fair enough. Andy, you up, or you want me to go?
I'll go. I'm considerably more positive on this than JJ, and I think maybe even more than you, Chad.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that is just for like a nostalgic ping that this game gives me. It really makes me feel like reminds me of like playing PS2 in my basement as a kid or whatever. But I know I would agree. Like this game definitely shows its age, and just throws in every mechanic it can think of, and the result is exactly as you would expect. All of it's shallower than it should be. But if you have access to a copy of this game, I would actually definitely recommend that you try it. But as JJ said, if you had to pay the $180 for it, definitely pass and just watch someone play it on YouTube or something.
Oh man, this would be like a super good Elders React video game, because they would be like have a greater understanding of a lot of the like electronic media jokes of the game. Mm-hmm. They would take the video and the volume things like really, really seriously. It might take several real life minutes to understand.
You're talking about like a Fine Bros Entertainment Elders React video, not like the Elders React. This would be a great Old Ones React video.
Ooh, reacts.
Red Gormore Reacts.
You can fall reacts. Absolutely.
As Andy was saying, I think he does come out as the most positive on this game as a whole, and I think that a lot of it has to do with just like level of patience and understanding for older games that I've lost over time.
Mm-hmm. I've got that.
Yeah,
still on the surface
in spades.
Whereas
like a lot of my frustrations with this game come specifically from its just like design principles that are from the early 2000s, things like having a save that's only functional some of the time, and like if you don't save for a while and die, it just kicks you to the main menu, which also means that you have to like wait for the main menu to load. Like, it doesn't just reload you immediately like a PC game might. That kind of a thing, I don't know, just like that grates on me because it just adds like insult to injury after you've died. And is like partially why I didn't. Well, partially that, and partially because like we had one copy of this game, and
right.
people to play. But overall, like I like so much about what this game does. Like I said, I think the spell system is actually really good. I just think it needs its kinks worked out. The combat system needs a little bit more variety to it to make it work. Exploration needs like a little bit more than some hallways and square rooms. Like, everything is there, and it just isn't expanded upon. And the problem is that the game is like 12 hours long right now, and if they tried to reduce the scale, it would be even shorter than that, and then people would have thrown a fit. So, I don't know. I like it. I think it's fine. I think it's not as good as it could be, and that's a shame. Thank you for listening to NoClip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, I can't do a spooky laugh because we're actually exiting October. But in November, we're going to be talking about What Remains of Edith Finch, which is still mildly spooky sometimes.
I guess.
Yeah, it's like a walking simulator variety hour, and it's probably my favorite one of those. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody else is too. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at NOCLIPpodcast.com. There you can find links to YouTube and email address if you want to talk to us. Hi. All of our old episodes, links to iTunes and Google Play. This is our call to action. Make sure that you, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star rating or a review if you're on iTunes. Do whatever you can to make more people hear about how cool we are.
And nothing other than that specific message.
Yeah, just tell people that we are cool. Mm-hmm. This feels like a classic, really bad no-clip outro.
Classic.
So your question is, like, when did people first become upset about something in the video game industry?
Like deeply culturally upset in a way that can be like described as a thing, as like the outrage over X. When was the first of those?
I don't think it's ever happened before. Video game players are a famously temperate and, understanding bunch. They've never been mad about anything except shortcomings with a smile.
Yeah. Diversity of opinion and life perspective welcomed with open arms.
Yes.